Hello! Today we're doing Matthew chapter 22. Bandit's here with me again. What a special treat, this handsome little boy. Oh, okay, wow, and he's got some attitude today. Um, yeah, I'm wearing Logan's old Demon Slayer shirt, which might look weird. But you know what? It's kind of perfect because we're reading about Jesus, the ultimate demon slayer. So, just saying. Um, anyways, sorry. I started the video but didn't actually flip back to my notes or have my Bible open or anything. Okay, I think I'm ready to go. Let's read through chapter 22 of Matthew. And again, Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son and sent his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding feast, but they would not come. Again, he sent other servants, saying, 'Tell those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fat calves have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast.' But they paid no attention and went off, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his servants, killed them shamefully, treated them shamefully and killed them. The king was angry, and he sent his troops and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. Then he said to his servants, 'The wedding feast is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore to the main roads and invite to the wedding feast as many as you find.' And those servants went out into the roads and gathered all whom they found, both bad and good. So the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to look at the guests, he saw there was a man who had no wedding garment. And he said to him, 'Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding garment?' And he was speechless. Then the king said to the attendants, 'Bind him hand and foot and cast him into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen.' Then the Pharisees went and entangle him in his words. And they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, saying, 'Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Tell us, then, what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?' But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, 'Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax.' And they brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to them, 'Whose likeness and inscription is this?' They said, 'Caesar's.' Then he said to them, 'Therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God.' When they heard it, they marveled, and they left him and went astray. The same day Sadducees came to him, who say that there is no resurrection, and they asked him a question, saying, 'Teacher, Moses said if a man dies having no children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died, having no offspring, left his wife to his brother. So too the second and third, down to the 7th. After them all, the woman died. In the resurrection, therefore, of the 7, whose wife will she be? For they all had her.' But Jesus answered them, 'You are wrong, because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. And as for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living.' And when the crowd heard it, they were astonished at his teaching. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. 'Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?' And he said to him, 'You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments depend all the all the law and the prophets. Now, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them a question, saying, "What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he?" They said to him, "The son of David." He said to them, "How is it then that David in the Spirit calls him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet'? If then David calls him Lord, how is he his son?" And no one was able to answer him a word, nor from that day did anyone dare to ask him any more questions. All right, so back to the start. This chapter is full of all the religious, political people just trying to get Jesus to say something wrong so that they can arrest him. And of course, Jesus is God, and so he definitely, subverts all their attempts. So, back to verse 1, and let's slowly dissect this thing. All right, again and again, Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son." All right, so the parable, let's set up the scene. The wedding feast is heaven. The king is God. And then it says a wedding feast for his son. So the Son of God would be Jesus, okay? And then the guests, the people that are invited, represent just all of us humans, humanity, all invited to the wedding feast to heaven. Okay? Verse 3, "And sent his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding, but they would not come. Again, he sent other servants, saying, 'Tell those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fat calves have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast.'" So, just like the kingdom of heaven, God sends out his people to let everyone know they're invited. Verse 5, "But they paid no attention and went off, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his servants, treated them shamefully, and killed them. The king was angry, and he sent his troops and destroyed those murderers and burned their city." So I want to point out that you have, out of the collective of people that rejected the invitation, that did not go to the wedding feast, you have two different answers. You have one group that just ignored God and went about their day doing whatever random stuff. And then you have the second group that didn't ignore God. They actively went after God. They actively went out of their way to hate God and disrespect his servants. It said they killed them and shamed them and whatever. And then the king gives an equal deserved judgment to the people that treated his servants shamefully and killed them. He goes and what does it say? He sent his troops and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. So, what I'm trying to point out is that hell, there are different degrees to it. I think people assume that all sin is equal, and you're actually wrong. All sin separates you from God. You're right in that. But there's different degrees to sin. There's different degrees to hell, different degrees to heaven. And so the people that ignored the wedding invitation and didn't go, they got exactly what they wanted. They did not want to be with the king, and they were not with the king. That was equal. The people that killed the servants of the king were killed. Equal. And so the Bible, I should have wrote down the verses that talk about it, but the Bible does talk about different degrees to heaven and to hell. And that just because, well, not just because, sorry, erase that, take that off the record. But yeah, so not all sin is equal. All sin separates you from God, but not all sin is equal in whatever punishment you have when you face judgment one day. Okay? Sorry, I'm checking my notes just to make sure I didn't miss anything, but I'm on track. Okay, continuing on. Verse 8. Then he said to his servants, the wedding feast is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore to the main roads and invite to the wedding feast as many as you find. Okay, so now the invitation is open to everyone. That the people that he intended to invite first rejected him, just like God sent his son to the people, to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And they reject him because we see the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Herodians, all the different types of Jewish people are rejecting the Messiah. And so they reject the invitation to the wedding feast, to heaven, and then God says to his servants, okay, go therefore to the main roads and invite to the wedding feast as many as you find. So the Israelites didn't want him, so God went elsewhere. Okay, so now this is symbolizing God taking the word, giving salvation to the Gentiles. It is not just for the Israelites. So again, to the Hebrew Israelites, to, I don't know, racists like the KKK and things that think that only white people or only black or only Hispanic or only XYZ people can be saved because of wherever they're from or their skin color. You're simply wrong. Okay, I don't want to hear any more arguments saying that only this type of person with this skin color are the true Israelites and God only came to save the Israelites, so everyone else is screwed. You're literally incorrect. Even if you were right that whatever group is the only true Israelites, which is such a ridiculous argument anyways, God literally opens the invitation to everyone, so you're wrong. We see this in in the parable. He tells them to go invite as many people as you can find. He opens the invitation to everyone. But then you have Jesus who, let me find it, heals the daughter of a daughter that's demon possessed of a Canaanite woman who is not Jewish. And then you have Paul, who is told by Jesus that he is going to take the word and the gospel to, I think, the rulers, the Israelites, and the Gentiles. Explicitly says he's going to take it to the Gentiles, the non-Israelite people. So, continuing on. Verse 10. And those servants went out into the roads and gathered all whom they found, both bad and good, so that the wedding hall was filled with guests. Another thing. Good people don't go to heaven and bad people will go to hell. Forgiven people go to heaven and unforgiven people go to hell. Okay? It literally says that at the wedding feast was both bad and good people. Jesus said that. Okay? There's bad and good people, whatever that means by societal standards. Okay? His point is that only forgiven people go to heaven. Okay? It's not about if you're good or bad, which if we are talking in those terms, there's only one who is good. But for the rest of us people, it says that salvation is something that we get by grace, not by our own works, okay? By grace, through faith, or whatever the verse is. We literally cannot earn salvation. And if you think you can, and you want to take something out of context, like the book of James, you're wrong. Your works are a symptom of your faith, but they are not your faith. Does that make sense? If you believe in God, then yes, you're changed and you might start doing good works. You might stop lying, stop drinking, stop being angry, stop being a terrible person, all that stuff. But are those behaviors what get you into heaven? No, they are not. Your behaviors do not get you into heaven. Your good deeds, whatever you do, you cannot earn heaven. Okay? So there's no one who is good enough to earn heaven. We all deserve hell because we all sin. And that's why it says both bad and good were at the wedding feast. Okay? Verse 11. But when the king came in to look at the guests, he saw there was a man who had no wedding garment, and he said to him, "Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding garment?" Okay, so now the question is, what does the wedding garment symbolize? Which no one has an exact answer. Obviously, the wedding garment was a necessary thing for the guests. That lacking it was a problem, because then in verse 13 it says, "Then the king said to the attendants, 'Bind him hand and foot and cast him into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen.'" So the wedding garment was obvious something important. Now, at the time, during this time, it's possible that a king, when they would have wedding guests or something, would provide the wedding garments for the guests. There's two different examples in the Bible. I don't remember where they're at. Did I write them down? No, I did not. I know one of them is in Esther, and then there's another one, I think, in like Genesis or something. I don't know. I don't remember. Anyways, it was thought that the king would provide the wedding garment. Now, we don't know for sure if that's the case in this parable that Jesus is telling. But if that is the case, then you have the invitation that's extended, God providing the wedding garment that's needed, and then someone that wants to accept the invitation but reject the thing that's needed. If the wedding garment is not provided by the king, you still have this picture that the wedding garment is essential to being there. Okay, so you accept the invitation, but you don't have the appearance that is required for the wedding. So it's kind of like you're half, I was going to use a word that's not appropriate for this video, half-aing something, you know, you're doing half the job. You're not complete in it. And I'm trying to explain this in a way that makes sense. Like, showing up to the wedding feast was the bare minimum. It was not enough, basically. Like, showing up was not enough. Like, you needed to commit to being the guest and accept the proper attire from God. So, like, saying that you accept Christ is not enough if you say it, but then you don't actually accept it. Does that make sense? Does this picture that I'm selling you make sense? The wedding guests had accepted the invitation and shown up, but had not taken the garments that he was given, that he was meant to wear, that is tied to the invitation. If you accept the invitation, you wear these garments. Okay? So he just wanted to show up and not do it. He wanted to say he's a Christian without actually meaning it, without believing it. And again, your works do not earn your salvation, but they do reflect that you have salvation. It's a symptom that if you believe, then all these other things will happen. Okay, does that make sense? I think that makes sense. I hope you can't hear Bandit eating his food right now. He's a little loud. All right, back to verse 13. It says at the end of it, after, bind him, cast him into outer darkness, blah, blah, blah. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, we've talked about the weeping and gnashing of teeth. I focused on it, I think it must have been either chapter 8 or chapter 13 of Matthew. Here that some of the times that weeping and gnashing of teeth is mentioned. It's mentioned in Matthew chapter 8, verse 12, chapter 13, verse 42, chapter 13, verse 50, and obviously right now there's two other times that it's mentioned in the future in Matthew that we have not read yet, and then it's mentioned one time in the book of Luke. So that's 7 times that the term weeping and gnashing of teeth is mentioned by Jesus in the Bible. Okay, weeping obviously gives you the picture of like sorrow, sadness, gnashing of teeth, pain, frustration. These feelings, this picture is representing what hell is going to be like. That it's going to be a place of sorrow, pain, frustration. Got it. All right, verse 14. For many are called, but few are chosen. I love this because it says for many are called. Literally, the invitation to heaven is extended to everyone. To everyone. There's no one that God says that he doesn't want to save. God literally loves everyone. Every single person is made in his image. The defining factor of who is chosen are the people that truly believe that God loves them, that he sent his only son to die on the cross, and that he took our judgment that we deserved for our sin. He lived a perfect sinless life so that he could take our place because we sin, and the wages of sin are death. That's what we deserved. He took our place. So the invitation is for everyone, but few will accept it. Okay. Moving on. I need to flip my notes. Verse 15. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words. Okay, so now the Pharisees are literally being devious, and they are just trying to find any reason to punish Jesus. It's so funny because like in their head they obviously think Jesus is so evil and terrible, but clearly he wasn't, because they cannot find a true reason as to why they should arrest him. He was abiding all the laws, and they cannot find a place where he did not abide the law so that they could arrest him. But they're so confident that what he's doing is illegal, even though they can't find anything to prove that it's illegal. All right. Verse 16. And they went with their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. So it says they sent their disciples, so talking about the disciples of the Pharisees, not Jesus's disciples. And then the group Herodians. I googled this because I was like, who the frick are the Herodians? Herodians were basically a political group that, I mean, in this time, being political and being religious, kind of went hand in hand. They still do today. The Herodians were a political group that just supported Herod and Herodias, and were a big fan of that monarchy. Okay, this group is typically against the Pharisees. However, as we see right here and in the next paragraph in this chapter, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. That's how the Pharisees are living. So they team up with the Herodians, and then they're sweet talking Jesus, saying, oh, we know that you say exactly what you mean, and you are going to say the truth no matter who dislikes it. And then they're trying to ask some little silly questions to make Jesus look bad in front of everyone. So verse 17, tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Now, paying taxes, all people that were ruled under the Roman Empire were, especially if you weren't Roman, if you were any other people group besides the Romans living under Roman rule, you were taxed heavily, and so you hated Romans and taxes. You absolutely hated them. So if Jesus says it's not lawful to pay your taxes, it would make the Jewish people feel good. However, obviously, they would be breaking the law and they would not be good citizens of the empire. But if he says that it is lawful to pay your taxes, the Jewish people would literally hate Jesus because he's telling them to pay their taxes, and they would discredit him. So either answer is not good. Also, I just want to point out Caesar. If you're watching Fallout Season 2, now anytime I think of the word Caesar, they have characters that are dumb and they say Kaiser, and I think that's hilarious. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh, Kaiser. That is funny. Okay, anyways, verse 18. But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, why put me to the test, you hypocrites? So Jesus knows they're trying to put him in a bad spot because there's no good answer. Verse 19, show me the coin for the tax. And they brought him a denarius. Denarius is the Roman, one of the Roman coins, obviously. Verse 20, and Jesus said to them, whose likeness and inscription is this? They said, Caesar's. Then he said to them, therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. When they heard it, they marveled, and they left him and went away. So, first of all, he totally didn't give them the answer they wanted, because they wanted him to say something very explicit that would either make the Jewish people hate them or give the Roman Empire a reason to think that Jesus was causing problems so that they could kill him. And he says, therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar, and to God the things that are God. So if the money has Caesar on it and it belongs to Caesar, give him the money. But he says to God the things that are God's. This is one of my favorite little snippets in the Bible, because if you flip back all the way to the beginning in Genesis, this is so freaking perfect. Genesis chapter 1, oh my gosh, I cannot get my fingers to work. Chapter 1, verse 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. He created us in his image. And so he says, if the money was created in Caesar's image, so it belongs to him, but us humans are created in God's image, so we belong to him. We should render ourselves to God, because that's to whom we belong. Oh, chef's kiss. Chef's kiss, okay? Literally, humans could not have come up with that. Like, that was literally perfectly done. Absolute masterpiece, a banger, and only God in like his perfection could create something as smooth as that. Dang, bro. It's so good. Okay, verse 23. The same day Sadducees came to him, who say that there is no resurrection, and they asked him a question. Okay, Sadducees, again, they are a religious sect of Judaism, and they were also typically rivals with the Pharisees. The Pharisees believed in the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, and all the prophets, and they believed in the spiritual realm and the things that are included in that. Sadducees were very literal. I think they only believed in the Torah. They did not care for the prophets and their teachings or anything. And they did not believe in a spiritual realm. They did not believe in a resurrection. They didn't believe in angels, demons, all that stuff. So now as they're asking this next question, they're trying to disprove the resurrection by giving this silly little example. So they think by giving this example is going to show how stupid it would be if there was a resurrection and how it wouldn't make sense. But Jesus, of course, outsmarts them at every turn. Verse 24, the Sadducees, saying, Teacher, Moses said if a man dies having no children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died having no offspring, and having no offspring left his wife to his brother. So to the second and the third, down to the 7th, after them all, the woman died in the resurrection. Therefore, of the 7, whose wife will she be? For they all had her. Now the law that the Sadducees is quoting comes from Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 through 10. So let me read it for you. If brothers dwell together, and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her as a wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And the first son whom she bears shall succeed to the name of his dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. And if the man does not wish to take his brother's wife, then his brother's wife shall go up to the gates to the elders and say, my husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother to me. Then the elders of the city shall call him and speak to him, and if he persists, saying, I do not wish to take her, then his brother's wife shall go up to him in the presence of the elders and pull his sandal off his foot and spit in his face. And she shall answer and say, so shall it be done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. And the name of the house shall be called in Israel, the house of him who had his sandal pulled off. Okay, so obviously this is a very serious thing, okay? That if your brother's wife dies and you're single, you're taking her and you're giving her a baby, okay? Very serious ordeal. So now they make up this scenario. And they're like, oh, well, she married all 7 of them and had no child. So when she dies, like, which one is she married to? Verse 29, but Jesus answered them, you are wrong because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. Now, when he says this, before we even acknowledge being married and whatnot, he knows that they're trying to make the point about the resurrection. They're trying to say being resurrected is not real, that heaven's not real, that there's no other spiritual realm, that there's only earth. And Jesus says you're wrong because you know neither scriptures. Okay, so they don't know the scriptures because Jesus is telling us that if you knew the scriptures, then you would know that it does in fact point to a resurrection in heaven. That you are wrong because you don't read them and believe the words of God. And it says, because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God, saying, you also, if you say that there's no resurrection, you're kind of saying that you don't think God has the power to have a resurrection and to create heaven. That there could not be another realm or anything. That God's not powerful enough to do that. And you're wrong, because God obviously is powerful enough to do that and says in scripture that he does in fact do that. So, I mean, they're just wrong all around. Not to mention that in Deuteronomy, I think it's Deuteronomy or Leviticus, it says don't put the Lord your God to the test, and clearly that is what these hoes are doing right now. But anyways, verse 30, for in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. Now for us married folk who actually love our husbands or our wives, whoever you are, this might be very sad sounding, and I'm not even gonna lie, it does sound a little sad to me. But that's also because I don't have an understanding of what heaven will be like. But if you remember, I think in Ephesians it talks about it, Ephesians 5, if I'm correct. Marriage, our marriage that we have with our spouses between man and woman, represents the covenant that God has with the church, us people. And so, when we die and we live in heaven, because we're living in perfect unity with God, that will be the ultimate marriage, the ultimate representation of that covenant of God loving his people and his people loving him. Okay? So heaven is the ultimate fulfillment of marriage, which is why we are not married there. Because right now, our marriage on earth is just a representation of what it will be like in heaven. So when we're there, it's ultimately fulfilled. Now, when I get to heaven, am I still going to see Nick and I'm going to be like giving him a little wink like, yeah, we're special friends, you know? Absolutely. But unfortunately, we will not be married in heaven. Verse 31. And as for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. So Jesus is implying that Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, these people are alive, that the resurrection did happen, and that these people are living in heaven. Okay? Let me check my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. If you wanted to see an example of someone marrying their brother because their husband died, marrying the husband's brother, not their brother, because that would be incest. Genesis chapter 38, verse 8 is when, this is literally in Jesus's genealogy. I don't remember who it is, but hold on, let me check. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm almost there. Who is it? Judah and Tamar. Okay, you can go read the story of that. It's totally effed up. It's a weird freaking story, but Judah and Tamar are in Jesus's genealogy, as I mentioned. But yes, you can go read about an example of that law. Did I miss anything else so far? Okay, no, I think I'm good. Moving on, verse 30. Did I read 33? And when the crowd heard it, they were astonished at his teaching. Okay, moving on. 34. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. Again, they had this mindset of the enemy of your enemy is... the enemy of your enemy is your friend. So they're usually rivals, but they're teaming up. Verse 35, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. The lawyer in this sense is not talking about like a lawyer that we think of today, in a courtroom. I mean, it kind of is, but kind of not. It just means they were an expert in the law, in the Jewish laws. They are an absolute expert. Okay, they bundled up all together. They're talking amongst themselves, seeing who knows the most, and they're like, oh, this guy's a genius when it comes to the law. He knows everything. We're going to go send him. He's going to be the, matchup for Jesus. Okay. Verse 36. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? Okay, so now they're trying to get him to say that one law is greater than the other, and that way they could incriminate him by saying that he said something blasphemous. Okay? Verse 37, and he, Jesus, said to him, the lawyer, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. Jesus is quoting, I think for most people, you probably don't know that he actually is quoting scripture. You think that he's like just summarizing the first 4 commandments of the 10 commandments and something. But no, that is a direct quote from Deuteronomy. If I could freaking flip there. Oh my gosh. Okay. Chapter 6, verse 5. And it says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Okay. And then also, earlier when I said you shall not put the Lord your God to the test, it's in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 16. Found it. And And then verse 39, and a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. This is also a quote, not just paraphrasing the last 6 of the 10 Commandments. And it is from Leviticus. Oh gosh, I'm flipping the wrong way. Falling apart. Okay, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Now, this part that I read says you shall love your neighbor as yourself, and it's talking about the Israelites. Okay? And then, same chapter in 19, go to verse 34. It says, you shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So this is about the non-Israelites as well. So Jesus, when he says this, is including everyone, not just Israelites, but the Gentiles as well. Okay? So neighbor, in this case, when he says love your neighbor as yourself, love everyone as yourself. There is no exclusion. There's no exception. You might think the exclusion might be your coworker, your boss, your family, your in-laws, your whatever annoying friends, classmates, whoever it is. And I'm telling you that there is no exception. Jesus did not say love your neighbor except the one that's here or there or whatever. Love your neighbor includes everyone. Verse 40, on these 2 commandments depend all the law and the prophets. So when he says the law and the prophets, the law, again, Torah, first 5 books, and then the prophets, all the other things. So saying the entire Old Testament depends on these two commandments. Okay, that's how important they are. But also I love that he said those rather than, because Jesus could have said, oh, well, all 10 commandments are important. Let me flip to Exodus 20. Oh my gosh, hold on. Because, so for the first 10 commandments, I'm dumb. For the first 4 of the 10 commandments, they all relate to God. They are, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. And remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Okay, those 4 relate to honoring God, right? And then the last 6 are honor your father and your mother, shall not commit murder, commit adultery, you shall not steal, bear false witness, and covet. Now those things all relate to dealing with other people and your neighbors. But what I love is that Jesus didn't pick one of those or 2 of those for his commandments. He said love God and love your neighbor, which I prefer because, let me take you on a little side quest that's going to connect back to this big picture. When I talk to Brian and Trish, shout out, love you guys, but we talk about how growing up, a lot of people talk about the nots. They see whatever picture of their parents and they're like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be like my dad. I'm not going to be like my mom. I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to drive that car. I'm not going to treat my kid like this. I'm not going to do this, that, and the third, okay? We talk about the nots, but people often don't talk about the things that they will do. They say, I'm not going to do that, but they don't say what they will be doing. And so a lot of these, at least for like the things relating to how we treat others, are you shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not covet. And it's a lot of the nots of like things that, okay, you're not going to do that. But you could like not murder, not commit adultery, not steal, not bear false witness, and be like, you could be respectful to your parents and your heart posture could still be wrong. That you're doing all these things, just like how the Pharisees are, that they are checking the boxes to all these things. On the outside, they are doing it the right way, but their heart is not right because they're not doing it from a place of love. Because Jesus is making the point that you are to love God and you are to love other people. You're not just doing the thing just because God told you you have to. And you don't want to sin because you want to be in heaven. And so this is how you earn your way to heaven. No, you just love God and you love other people. And because you're filled with love, then all your actions come out through love. And do you get what I'm saying? Like the heart posture. Because that is what Jesus really struck when he said these 2 commandments. It wasn't just like you do the right things. It's that you also like are right with God in your heart while you're doing the right things. And that is important. All right, verse 41. Now while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them a question, saying, "What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he?" They said to him, "The son of David." He said to them, "How is it then that David in the Spirit calls him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet'? If then David calls him Lord, how is he his son?" Now, Jesus, he quotes Psalm 1. I didn't write it down. Oh no, I did write it down. I thought I was silly. Turns out I'm not. Psalm 110, verse 1. So let me flip there. Okay. 110, verse 1. The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Now this is a psalm from David that is clearly a messianic prophecy. The Pharisees would have known this. But Jesus said, talking about the Messiah, calls him Lord, even though the Messiah is going to be his son. During this time, if you were the son, you were not in higher ranking over your father or your grandfather or whatever. Okay, if you were the younger generation, you were to submit to the older generation, and that was your hierarchy. So for Jesus to be the son of David, but then the Messiah, that would put him in ranking above David, his great grandfather, okay, which would not have made sense to their totem pole. But while they know this, everyone would have agreed that Jesus, or that the Messiah, is going to be the son of David, and he's obviously the Messiah, so he is in a position of power that God put him in. But while they logically knew this, they did not really believe it, because Jesus asked them, if then David calls him Lord, how is he his son? Jesus wasn't saying, oh, how is he his son, because actually he's not. No, he's making the point to them that they don't really believe that. It's like, well, you're saying he's Lord but not Jesus or David's son. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. Because, verse 46, before I go on. Verse 46 says, and no one was able to answer him a word, nor from that day did anyone dare to ask him any more questions. So, Jesus was reminding them that the Messiah is still fully man. Because the prophecy is right, that Jesus is from the line of David. And it's fully right that he is Lord over David as well, despite being his son. To them, it didn't make sense because they're using their man-made measures that, oh, the son cannot be greater than the father, basically. Talking about a human son cannot be greater than his human father, okay? Because the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are all equal. I did not just commit blasphemy. But for them, they're like, oh, well, Jesus is just reminding them, like, hey, the scripture says that the man there's going to be a man that comes from the line of David. Okay, he's from David's line, who is a human, so his line is going to remain human. This son is going to be a human person, a human man, okay? And he's still the Messiah, because obviously the Pharisees are looking at Jesus and they see that he's a man, and they're like, you're not the Messiah. You're literally a normal human being, just like the rest of us, so you can't be the Messiah. You can't be from the line of David. And he's like, bro, literally, have you read the prophecies? Have you read any of the scriptures that tell you I'm going to be a man? I'm going to be a human. I'm from the line of David, who is a human. And so he's just reminding them, like, yes, I am fully God and I am fully man. I am both. I hope that made sense. With that, that is the conclusion of chapter 22, brother. And so I hope you're having a fabulous day. I've been really on top of videos this week. And yeah, that's the conclusion of chapter 22. Next week we'll have chapter 23. And should I leave my comments on? I don't know. If I might leave the comments on for this video. If I don't leave the comments on, but you know me personally, then text me and tell me if you think what next book of the Bible I should read through, assuming that I do another one, because I don't technically have to, I have free will, but I kind of like doing these videos, so I just want to start prepping in my mind, because we only have 6 chapters left of Matthew. We've gone by, and so before we know it, we'll be done with this, and I could start a next book of the Bible, if that's helpful. So anyways, like I said, text me if you know me personally. If you don't know me personally, maybe I'll leave the comments on for this video, and then you can put what you want to see. And also, just spread the word. Remember to be bold in your faith. Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 28 that we're to go out and make disciples. So reach out to people, whether that's inviting them to church, that could be sending them this episode. It could be reading your Bible with them, going out to breakfast and just talking about, what's on their heart and where they put their faith in their life. If they have faith in God or if they believe in something else, and just have a discussion. Go out and make disciples, because we are all called to do that. It's not preachers or teachers that are given that command. He told his disciples, his believers. So if you believe in God, you will obey his commandments, and so obey them. Be disciplined and obedient to God. Okay, well, if I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.